And I want to introduce Tim English. He is or was the #1 buyer's agent for Keller Williams Capital City in 2020. Whoop, whoop. That's pretty awesome. And he earned his principal broker's license last year and launched his own team and opened up a mega agent office. And I know he is also on the Agent Leadership Council. So you are in very good hands, and I will let you take it away, Tim.
All right. Appreciate it, Jen. Thanks so much. All right. Well, I'm gonna share my screen. And where is, no, that's not it. Where's my, oh, okay, somebody's coming in. Where did my page go? No, I'll just have to find it again. All right, just a minute. Here. Here. Oh, I know where it's at. What am I doing? It is here. Here we are. Okay. Can you guys see that? You see or Win the Buyer, session 14, Ignite. Let me change my. What is going on here? I'm getting frustrated. Okay, here we are. I am. Okay, can everybody see in here? My screen's not doing what I want it to do, and I'm a little frustrated. Okay. All right, so Win the Buyer. Today's agenda, we're gonna move through viewing yourself. How you view yourself as the real estate expert is really important in how you do business. I realize at the very beginning, sometimes we're going to be dealing with imposter syndrome, but do not make apologies for yourself. All right. You've got to kind of win that battle in your head that you are the real estate expert and you are there to help that person. So there's got to be a measure of believing in yourself as you come in to help the client. The agent who trained me said to really start picturing yourself as if you're the doctor coming into the patient room, and you're going to ask all the questions that you need to ask in order to get a diagnosis to figure out the person's situation and their quote unquote problem to know how to help them. So maybe that's an affirmation that you add to your affirmations of, I am a local real estate expert, or I am the doctor. Then from there, we're going to talk about lead generation. Where are we going to find these buyers? And then how are we going to follow up with them to actually meet with them and turn it into a piece of business? So here is the 7-step buyer cycle. All right, so number 1, you got leads moving into an appointment. 2, you're going to prepare for that buyer consultation. Then you're going to conduct the consultation. 4, you're going to show homes. 5, you're going to negotiate the contract. And then you're going to service the buyer during the contract all the way to closing, and then follow up with them afterwards. So that's what we're going to move through. So keys to converting your A buyers. Respond right away to lead inquiries, right? So the saying is speed to lead. So I don't know, where you guys are finding leads, but if you were getting internet leads, or if you had somebody actually call and leave a message or text you, you want to respond to leads as soon as possible. You want to make sure that you're getting valid and complete contact information. A lot of times in the beginning, you get so excited that you're talking to a lead that then you walk away and you go, oh, crud, I forgot to get this piece of information, or I forgot to ask this question. So make sure that you practice, you kind of script and role play with somebody. Maybe it's your spouse or a family member or a friend or somebody at your market center, but make sure you're scripting and role playing around qualifying buyers and asking these questions so that it becomes more natural. And because I tell you what, when you get those leads, or you're thinking that somebody's going to turn, they're going to say yes to a consultation with you, the adrenaline can kind of get pumping, and you end up forgetting to ask sometimes important questions. All right, so you're going to get their contact information. You're going to make sure and enter them into command and create that opportunity, and put in all that information there. All right, determine their motivation to buy so you can speak to it. So again, if you were in my class last week, we don't want to ask why questions. We want to ask what or how questions. So if they're giving you a time frame, they say, hey, I don't want to buy a house until July. You don't say, why July? You would say something about, what about July is important to you? Okay. Or if you're just bringing up the idea of motivation, you can say something like, what has got you thinking about buying a house? Or excuse me, what has got you thinking about buying a home? So make sure in your language with buyers and sellers, buyers are buying homes, not houses, and sellers are selling houses, not homes. And the reason for that is home is an emotional word and house is a neutral word. And you're wanting buyers to warm up to the idea of buying a home, and you're wanting sellers to detach from the home that they've lived in for however many years and see it as a house. So make sure you jot that down. Those are two important word differences that you want to use there. But anyway, you've got the lead, you've found the lead, you've got their information, you've had a little conversation with them. Maybe you've found out when and why they are thinking about moving. Well, now it's time to set the appointment. Sometimes in having that initial conversation, you may think to yourself that they're not ready for some reason to have that appointment. I would encourage you to not say no for other people. Let them say no for themselves and just go ahead and ask. Because again, if you wait, they could end up working with somebody else. They could slip away and ghost you, and then you've lost the lead. So if you're there, you might as well ask. And so I use a little script. It's really short and straightforward. I can email it to you guys if you're interested in it. But basically, if I'm talking to a client, whether it's face to face, over the phone, or whatever, once we're kind of winding up the conversation and I'm ready to ask for the appointment, I just say something like this. So here's what I'd recommend we do. So you see, recommend is that kind of word where you're the expert. So it's, you're basically saying, based on this information, based on our conversation, Here's how I'm going to diagnose this as the real estate expert for you. Here's what I recommend we do. Why don't we find a time to get together where I can go over the home buying process with you, share with you the latest market data in your area for the homes that you're looking at, and we can also look at some homes directly off the multiple listing service and bypass Zillow and all those other sites that aren't as accurate. How does that sound? So I've given them 3 reasons why they should want to meet with me. I'm going to clarify the home buying process for them, make it really simple. I'm going to share with them updated market data so they can make the best informed decision for their family. And we're going to, and we'll do the fun part. We'll look at some homes. And I let them know that looking at homes with me on the MLS is going to be way more accurate and detailed than searching by themselves on Zillow. So I just mentioned those 3 things, and then basically, so here's what I recommend we do. Why don't we find a time to get together, and that way I could go over the home buying process with you, share with you updated market data so you can be informed and make the best decision for your family. And then we can also look at some homes on the MLS and see, exactly what's out there, since Zillow and other websites aren't as accurate. How does that sound? How about, tomorrow at 4 or Friday at 5? So you always close with giving them 2 options. Your calendar at this point might be wide open, but you don't tell them that. Hey, I could meet at any time. That just, kind of gives somebody the clue, oh, they don't have any clients, which means either desperate or they don't know what they're doing. So you don't want to give off that impression. You want to be in charge of your schedule. You want to, again, you're coming across as the expert and you're saying, here, I can meet with you here, or I can meet with you here. So just give them two times or dates and let them pick one. If neither of those work, then obviously you go back and, you suggest another time. Maybe they suggest a time and you work it out till obviously till you get a date. Now, in meeting with people, I would recommend, if at all possible, that you meet at your market center. It's fine to have coffee or meet, at a coffee shop or a restaurant sometimes with people. And I know, on the listing side, sometimes listing agents meet at the people's home. But for a buyer's consultation, again, you're trying to give the impression that you are the expert, and it's kind of hard to do that at a restaurant or a cafe or some other place where you've got to bring out your laptop and try and show them homes. There's something psychological about them coming to you instead of you going to them. So even if you don't office out of your market center, they don't know that. So I would just set up an appointment at, get on the list and reserve your conference, get your conference room, consultation room at the market center and have them meet there. Again, it's in a business environment. It's going to look way more professional. They're used to going, if they're going to meet their CPA, their lawyer, their financial planner, they go to that person's office. So if you're the professional, they should come to your office. So does that make sense? All right. Any questions or ahas so far?
I love that. It's much more professional to meet at the office.
Yeah.
So, and I don't even know if I would call it the market. We need to make sure we don't call it the market space. Why don't we meet at my office?
Correct. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. And again, again, it's psychological. So just in that conversation, you're showing that you're the expert, they're moving towards you. Then when you actually have the consultation, they're already in that mindset of I'm in, if I'm the buyer, I'm in your space, and you're running the show, you're asking the questions. I'm much more likely to, I've already basically said yes to you leading me. And so I'm going to be much more likely to then sign your buyer broker agreement at the end of the consultation and um, and have you help me buy a house, right? If they're not willing to go to your office, that kind of already shows that they, at that point, don't trust you enough to say that I'm, going to follow you or I'm going to use your services. Okay, so they've got here in your student workbook 7 different ways to close for the appointment. I'm not going to take the time to go through all 7. You can basically look these up on the internet and find them on a variety of real estate websites, and find examples of these kinds of dialogues. I'm just going to share with you the one that I use, which is the assumptive close, number 6. So for me, on the assumptive close, basically you are, throughout that conversation, you're using language that shows that you're already planning, assuming that they're going to work with you, right? So you're not being, I don't know, over the top or in some way arrogant or pushy about it, but you're just friendly and warm and like, why wouldn't they want to do business with me? So Mary, you're the only live face that I see. Other people have turned off their videos, so I'm going to pick on you. But I would just say, Mary and I are having this conversation, and I'm asking her questions about her buying a home, and so maybe I've gotten into a little bit of personal information with her about her family and whatnot. And in my mind, I'm already her friend. We're already friends. I already care about her. I already believe in her and her family, and I want to help her and her family buy a house. Why would she want to work with anybody else besides me? I mean, that's just my mindset. So I'm already going to, hey, let's go to the office, So it's just that one's there's not so much a clear script around it as much as it is a mindset where you're just assuming that they're going to do business with you, and you talk and act in that way, and you'll feel if they're moving along with you or whether they're resisting you. Because so if they're resisting you, maybe you're moving too fast and you back up a little bit and ask more questions, or you have to build a little bit more trust for them to see why they should work with you. But that's the assumptive close. And for me, that's the one that works because of my personality. So you just have to study these and find the 1 or 2 or 3 that work for you. Okay, buyer objections to the appointment. So whether it's the appointment or when you're out showing homes, getting people to actually make a decision, there's always objections. And so you got to be careful not to accept their objections as reality, or accept their rejection or objections as fact or final. Okay. Basically, and you want to jot this down, people are always operating in a way that they think is in their best interest, right? So given the information that they have and the experiences that they have, they're making certain decisions, right? So maybe because they've been burned a bunch of times, they're more skeptical about believing you, or, you know, whatever their life experiences have been. So as you're qualifying them as a buyer, you're going to be able to determine what their motivation level is and kind of what's that fear factor around. Are they like really standoffish, or are they warm? What kind of objections are they throwing your way? That kind of thing is going to tell you a lot about who that person is and where they're at. So just remember that they're going to throw things up like might be market issues, like we're waiting for the prices of homes to come down. We're waiting for the interest rate to come down. We're waiting for the market to crash. We're waiting for this. We're waiting for that. They'll have some reason why they're waiting. And it's not that they're lying. It's more of in that realm of excuse where they're telling themselves a story, and maybe because of all the things that are going on in their life, they're not really ready to make this big decision, and so they keep putting it off, and they keep putting it off, and they keep putting it off. So part of your job as a realtor is to also kind of be a counselor, if you will, or a coach. All right, you gotta know the psychology and understand where people are at. And so they're going to give you these reasons, and you've got to help without being adversarial, right, or debative. You've got to be able to address these objections and concerns in such a way that helps them change their perspective and be willing to move forward. So here's this 5-step system. The first thing is to ask questions. Most of us are not very good question askers. Most realtors like to talk. We're talkers, right? But you can't really talk someone in to buying a home. I suppose you sort of could, but it's not going to last. It's not going to really work. So we've got to get out of just doing all the talking and into being curious about the people and asking. For every question that you ask, it should raise more questions. So you just go another level deeper and keep asking more questions and dive deeper and deeper and deeper till you really, really understand this person or this couple or whoever it is. Which, number 2, is going to cause you to empathize. At some point, you've got a clear enough picture around their situation that you want to be giving off body language and verbal responses that show that you understand. What we call mirror and matching their tone of voice, matching their body language, leaning forward, that shows interest. All of those kind of things to show that you're empathizing with the buyer. Then as you've asked questions, number 3, you're going to identify what the real issue is. And it's usually not the original thing that they told you. It's usually something deeper. And then when you finally find out what the real issue is, then 4, you can offer a solution. And again, when you offer the solution, you don't want it to come across as telling them what to do. So here's where you'd say, could I offer it? You know, maybe you even ask for permission. That's a real powerful thing in conversations. May I share something with you? Could I offer you a different perspective? Could I suggest this? Get permission, which already gives you some measure of buy-in, and then offer a solution to their problem. Have you ever thought about this? You know, maybe what's got them scared so many buyers are scared because they're also sellers and they didn't want to become homeless, or they didn't want to be forced to buy something that they didn't really want to buy because they had their house on the market. So what are some possible solutions? Basically you want to come to the table going, hey, I deal with this all the time. Let's talk about transitional housing. Let's talk about, could you live with somebody? Let's talk about, do you have an RV that you could park somewhere? Let's talk about, how I could line up these two deals to actually make them seamless to get you, so you only have to move once instead of twice. Let's talk about rent backs. And there's just a bunch of different solutions. So sometimes people don't know that those are possibilities, and you all of a sudden you share like, hey, here's some ways that we can solve this issue, and they go, oh wow, I never thought of that. That's okay, maybe that is possible. Or, oh, there's a bridge loan, I could actually purchase first and then sell second. So a lot of different ways and then that's part of your job then as a realtor, is to be a creative problem solver. So you'll find different people or even co-op agents on the other side of the transaction sometimes aren't very creative problem solvers. And they'll just go, oh, well, I don't know what else to do. We're at an impasse, deal falls apart. Or I don't know what else to do, so I guess I'm not going to buy a home because I've got this looming problem that I can't seem to solve. Well, you come across as a creative problem solver and help them solve their problem, and you're the genius. And and you're their savior in a way, right? You're gonna help them be able to make it possible. So make sure that's where your education comes in, talking to more experienced agents and figure out what some of the solutions are to people's common real estate issues. All right, so then finally, when you find out what the issue is and you offer a solution, then you're going to urge for agreement. And so that's where we talk about isolating the issue. You would say something like, so besides your issue around interest rates, current interest rates, is there anything else that's holding you back from buying a home right now? No, it's just mainly interest rates. Okay, right. So then you offer the solution. So isolating the problem helps tie them down in a sense. They've already told you that this is their only problem. If there is another problem, they'll bring that up and then you can solve for that one. But once you can get it down to one and say, is there anything else? No, it's just this one thing. Okay, well, have you ever thought about this? And you solve it, then they're kind of left with, I don't have any more problems. There's no reason to say no. And then you can say, well, so here's what I recommend we do. Why don't we find a time to get together, right? And go close for the appointment. Okay. Let's move on. Buyer consultation preparation checklist. Okay, confirming appointment day and time. Generally, I do that either the afternoon before or the morning of their appointment. So you could do that by a call, or you could just send a quick text. But always good to confirm appointments and not just presume that somebody's going to show up. You just by that one little thing will save you a bunch of time, because people get busy, they forget, their schedules change. And so again, instead of getting upset, or having spent time and energy and then having someone stand you up, better to just go ahead and confirm that appointment. One, it shows professionalism on your part. You're showing that it's important to you. And it holds them accountable, right? Because then they have to come back and go, oh yeah, that's right, my schedule changed, I need to reschedule. Or it just reminds them of the appointment that they might have forgotten about, had you not reminded them. So just, and I'll just build it into the conversation. I'll just sit after we pick a time. Remember, you're the expert, so you're the leader, you're staying in control of the process. So whenever you're finishing a conversation, you're letting them know what's going to happen next. So even if I'm just talking to a lead and the lead says, I'm not ready, and after talking to them a little bit, they just, it becomes obvious that I'm not going to be able to move them to an appointment. They really are, 6 months out. Then I'm still the leader. I don't just give up and go, oh, well, I guess I'll catch you 6 months from now. No, I say, okay, great. So looks like you might be ready in July. And so here's what I'm going to do. I'll reach out to you in about 3 months and just check in and see how things are going, see if anything's changed. And if it hasn't, then kind of at that process, you might be we might be ready to start moving towards getting you pre-approved. And you see what I'm doing? It's like, I'm assuming they're going to work with me. I'm letting them know when I'm going to follow up with them. And I'm telling them what the next steps on their journey is, regardless of whether they're going to meet with me tomorrow or a year from now. They're going to go in my database and I'm going to follow up with them systematically to stay sticky. So, in confirming with that at the end of we book a time, then I'll just tell them. And so, a week from now, when we meet, what I'll do is I'll either reach out to you the day before or the morning of. You'll get a text from me reminding you about the appointment, okay? So now they know what to expect. They even know that I'm going to remind them, right? All right, confirm the location. Make sure it's a safe choice. Your first best and safest choice is to meet at the office, right? Here's a key. Circle this one. Ensure all the decision makers are there. Okay, if they're married, you don't want to just be meeting with one of the spouses. You want to be meeting with both. Other thing I would say besides that would be if you've got a young couple, like they just got married, or maybe you have a single person that's, in their 20s, even though they say that they're the only decision maker, they are not the only decision maker. Mom or dad is in the background somewhere. Even if they don't go on the showings, even if they're not there to make a decision, that person's going to go back and be having a conversation with mom or dad. So just go ahead and talk to the person up front about it and just say, hey, even if mom or dad is not like the final decision maker, if they're at all, if they want to be involved, turn it into a positive thing. Just say, hey, love to have them come to the consultation, love to have them come along for the showing so they can feel like they're a part of the process. Would that be okay? And they say, oh yeah, that would be fine. Okay, so then get them involved, because what you don't want to have happen is give them the information, lead them through the process, and then have mom or dad poo-poo the decision when you're trying to help them buy a home and have them second guess what they're doing and lose out on a home. So you might as well bring mom and dad along for the whole conversation so they're getting all the information along the way, and don't start to see you as the adversary when they're out to try and protect their son or daughter.
They can actually be an ally.
Exactly. Yeah, because of their experience. Yeah. And at the same time, you also may have to update them on market conditions, because they might be advising their son or daughter to put in this low ball offer, and you have to go, well, this isn't the buyer's market of yesteryear. This is a seller's market, and it's all right. So that's a key right there, number 3. Have all your buyer materials printed. Okay. Basically here, I don't know what you guys have seen or used. I've got a sheet that's just a questionnaire of questions that I ask buyers to help me jot down all of their details, from bedrooms and bathrooms and yards and fences and their lending and the locations that they're open to and how much cash they have to work with. And I mean, just anything and everything. I have a big, long questionnaire. Again, like a doctor, like what does the nurse do? Asks you all the questions before the doctor comes in, right? And if you can ask some of those questions ahead of time on the phone before they ever come in, that's even better, right? Because what you don't want to have is waste your time on an appointment with a buyer who's not ready. Now, sometimes, not very often, every once in a while, I'll make an exception and I'll meet with a buyer who hasn't actually gotten pre-approved first. But I bet you 95% of the time, I'm not meeting with the buyer until they're actually pre-approved. So that's just a step they need to take in order to be ready. And I don't want them telling me numbers that, most buyers will know what they can afford, but some of them don't. And some of them are not in reality and kind of want to inflate their numbers, and they're not going to be, approved for as much as they think they are. And so I just tell them that up front. I just said, hey, you know, um, best to get pre-approved first, and that way you know where your finances are at and you know what you can shop for. I don't want to get your hopes up either in the consultation or showing you homes that then you're not able to buy. That wouldn't be fair to you. And it would just be a waste of time. So let's get pre-approved first. And then, I might go ahead and book that. How much time do you need to get pre-approved? Oh, I can get it done by such and such a day. Okay, well, then let's book our appointment for here, a day or two after they get pre-approved. And so again, that gives them the impetus to go ahead and get pre-approved, knowing that they need to do that first in order to meet with you. Okay. Preparing the meeting space. So make sure things are neat, clean, organized. Your technology is ready to go. Maybe you have water bottles there for them or whatever. Some people try and get more fancy than that. I'm kind of a down to earth kind of guy, and I work over in Dallas, which is definitely a blue collar town. So I'm not doing a lot of fancy stuff. I set out water bottles for people, again, just to show that, hey, I'm thinking about them and I want them to be comfortable while they're at the consultation. All right, so your lead sheet, the information that you've gathered ahead of time, make sure you're going over that before the consultation. Depending on how much information you have, if you have quite a bit of information, go ahead and do a search on their parameters to know ahead of time kind of what's out there. In the last few years, there hasn't been a whole lot out there, right? And so depending on what they're looking for, you're like, oh, I don't know if we're going to be able to find that. And better to know that ahead of time than to be semi-surprised in the middle of a consultation, right? So just do whatever you can to be as prepared as possible, again, so that you come across as the expert. This is like a buyer's packet. You can find templates in Command Designs, kw.com, Search Ignite, Reference Guide. Different people use different things. Again, I'm kind of a down to earth guy. I don't like, there's the fewer things that I have to remember, the better. And I find, I don't know, people I work with, nobody has ever said, you didn't provide me with a buyer's guide. Nobody's ever said that. I don't worry about it. I think it's extra cost. I think it's extra time. I think it's something extra to fuss over and end up focusing your time on stuff that's not really money producing activities. So I don't use one, but you can do whatever you want to. All right, so here's some questions that's really kind of like qualification questions when you're trying to understand what the buyer wants. So these are good questions to maybe have on your questionnaire. Who's going to be living in the home? How many bedrooms do you need? What are your non-negotiables? If you had to name your top 5 non-negotiables, what would they be? Beyond your top 5 needs, what's something else that you really want? Do you have any preference for the year of home? Most people won't, but some people want newer homes or new construction, or some people want older homes because they have character. So that's a good question to ask. Do you need a home? Do you need a house? Do you need a home that is move-in ready, or are you willing to do some work? Right? Are any specific features that you would add to make your next house feel like home? So, I mean, and these are just a sampling. There's a lot more questions than that you'll want to work through with your clients to try and understand. And you can't have them all necessarily spelled out on your sheet. It'll just be like I just have a question about bedrooms and bathrooms, and then I leave myself some space to size of yard, and they might say, oh, well, I need a big yard. Well, big is relative. So what is a big yard to you? So maybe you're asked, how are you going to use the yard? What's important to you about the yard? Is it gardening, or is it a bunch of dogs? Do you need it fenced? Do you need sunlight? Do you want shade? All those different things. So that's where you start getting into particulars with people, or where you show that you're trying to problem solve. So you might get somebody who's on the lower end of the financial spectrum in terms of price point, and that's where question number 6 comes in. Is so you can see Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, you guys have already done some looking at homes in such and such a neighborhood, and you can see that the homes are kind of in this price bracket. So, sometimes you give an either or question. So what's more important to you? It to be totally move-in ready and get less square footage, or be a little outdated and get more square footage? Different people have different priorities. If they've got quite a few kids and they need as much square footage as possible, they might have to be willing to budge on some of their expectations and go with a house that needs some updating, where you encourage them, hey, the kids aren't going to care. You need the space, and you can update it over time. It doesn't all have to be done now, right? So, I mean, you're trying to help them adjust to their situation and help them see that it's still possible. It doesn't necessarily have to be all of these things that they're dreaming about.
Do you find it helpful to ask them, what are some of their huge turnoffs? What is it that they really hate in houses?
Not so much. I mean, obviously when you see what's super important to them, you're gonna like somebody will say, I need a big kitchen. We do a lot of entertaining. I want to be able to have 3 or 4 people in this kitchen, blah, blah, blah. So you can say, okay, a kitchen's really important. They're not, so galley kitchen's not going to work. Some of these older, so I don't tend to focus on that. I find that if something's really a big turnoff, they usually tell you. People tend to focus on the negative more than the positive.
That's why I thought it would be helpful to ask, because
Yeah,
I hate basements. I don't want one.
yeah,
And a lot of times houses that realtors would show me had basements, and it's like, I seriously hate them.
yeah.
Um,
So when things are non-negotiable, well, okay, that could be a non-negotiable, could be positive or negatives, right? I don't want a
right.
home that has this. Um, I do want a home, absolutely need whatever, whatever it is. So, usually in those non-negotiables, people will tell you what those things are that are turnoffs. All right, so preparing for the buyer consultation. So you're getting ready for this buyer. Really, there's not a whole lot you really need to do other than, like I said, you've got your questionnaire. Maybe you've already done a property search and kind of have an idea of what's out there that's available and of what they're looking for. I would say the biggest preparation is just your mindset. So they've got this affirmation here. I am knowledgeable and caring and the best agent for these clients. They will appreciate my expertise and preparation and choose me to represent them as they buy their home. Could be that, could be something else, but you don't want to get all wigged out and stressed out about your buyers. Here's a whole bunch more questions. Buyer needs analysis. So again, you can look through all these questions and see what ones you'd want to include in your own buyer questionnaire. Close for agreement. All right, so when you have okay, so we haven't even, oh, we're like way at the end already. Let me back up here a second. We didn't even really talk about where you're going to find buyers. Huh, okay. I'm going to back up from the consultation. I don't know why this isn't in the material. So, okay, so where are we going to find buyers? And this is definitely not a rhetorical question. So jump in, throw something out. Where do we find buyers at?
Well,
Kind
of
of,
course, within our sphere.
What's okay in your sphere, right? As you're making phone calls, having somebody over to your house, having coffee. Yeah, you run into people who want to do business with you. Perfect. Where else?
well,
Death.
Dee stole my answer, open houses.
Okay, open houses, right? They're looking for houses, so they're going to come to to the open house. Perfect. Where else?
Death, divorce, marriage.
Okay, so I love your answer, because it's not so much a place as it is a time in their life. So your ears need to perk up when you hear people talking about getting married, having a baby, changing jobs, divorce, a funeral, an elderly parent who's moving to assisted living. All of those major life changes are when people buy and sell real estate. So lean into those conversations, ask questions, find out how you can help. That's where you're gonna, also where you're gonna find buyers. Obviously, there's other lead generation possibilities. Some people door knock. There's obviously internet leads, which don't tend to be all that reliable. I would caution you against wasting your money on those. Prospecting is yourself for in your sphere and in just growing your sphere and meeting more people. Business to business referrals, agent to agent referrals, lender referrals. I'd say 90% of my business is out of my sphere referrals, and what we call, allied resources, my business partners, lenders, other KW agents, referrals. So that's most of my business right there. So that's where we're going to find these buyers. And then, like we said, we're going to qualify them. We're going to help them get pre-approved. We're going to move them through preparing to buy. We're going to get them ready for the consultation. Then we're going to have the consultation. So the consultation, let me talk about that for a little bit. I don't know what you guys have heard so far, or what you've seen, or maybe you've done a buyer consultation. I don't know. But basically, in my mind, I have a kind of a 3-point buyer consultation. So let me give you my 3 points, and you can kind of build off of that as an outline, skeleton outline for your buyer consultation. So when Mr. and Mrs. Buyer come in to my office and sit down, we talk for a little bit. I ask them a few questions, right? You're trying to get them comfortable, try to connect with them, try to assess their emotional state. Maybe they just had an argument. Maybe the baby's crying or sick, or, who knows what's going on in their life. So make sure you're sensitive to them first. You show that you actually really care instead of just like jumping into what you want to talk about. So you need to connect with them first personally, kind of get everybody's comfortable and settled. All right, so Mr. and Mrs. Buyers, I have 3 goals for today. My first goal is to get to know you better and make sure I understand exactly what your situation is, what you're looking for, what your real estate goals are, so that I can know how to help you. That's my number 1 goal. My number 2 goal is to share with you market information so you know what to expect when you get out there. And the second part is to share with you some information about myself and how I help people buy homes and spend the least amount of money and the least amount of time. So goal number 2 is really 2-part. It's my market data and about how the home buying process, what's unique, what's my value proposition to them about how I'm going to help them spend the least amount of money and the least amount of time to get the house that they want. Okay. And then goal number 3 is that at the end of that, you can basically, if you feel comfortable with it and you want to do business with me, then I've got some paperwork that my broker requires for us to fill out, and we can do a property search. Right, so they're there for the property search, right? They really don't, you could just skip and go to the property search and they'd be happy, right? So you save the property search for the end, right? That's the candy, that's the reward for them getting through the consultation. And yeah, I've got a little bit of medicine for you. We got to do a little bit of paperwork. So I just kind of minimize that, make it sound like it's just, some required documents, not a big deal. And basically, by the time I'm done with goal number 1 and goal number 2, they already know whether they're going to do business with me. And I already know whether I want to do business with them. I'm sort of interviewing them. So we get to the end of all that, and then I'm going to say, okay, so I've got some paperwork here. And then I'll just talk them through the paperwork, talk them through the buyer broker agreement. Now, are you guys familiar with the settled lawsuit and all the changes and why it's important to do a buyer broker agreement? Or is that something that's new? Yes, no, maybe? I don't hear anybody.
I am familiar and I'm looking at your conversations to close for the agreement. And I was wondering if you'll address, I see that you kind of have a lead in here, but as far as discussing the payment process
Yeah.
is the most anxiety producing, as well
Right.
as I think the most important on how we present that in a factual way, but also how we
Right.
we prove our value.
Yeah. Right. So that's where, as a business person, you've just got to decide who you are, and you got to believe in yourself, and you got to treat yourself like you're a business. And so for me, I see out there that 90 whatever percent of the buyer broker, or the buyer agent commission that's being passed on from the listing agent is at 2.5. So for me, I just decided that I work for 2.5. So when we get to that part, we're filling out the buyer broker agreement. We work through, okay, what locations, what's your loan type? Okay, we're going to sign this agreement for 6 months. All the other things that we need to answer. And then when we get to percentage, I just share with them. Say, so Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, just want you to know, I work for 2.5%. Now, when we look at homes here in a second, I'll show you on these listing sheets that the vast majority of them, 90 whatever percent of them, are going to be sharing 2.5%. So, and I'll probably share about the lawsuit and say, so here's the change that the industry, or that that the government wants you to realize, Mrs. and Mr. Buyer, that you're, in a sense, you're supposed to be responsible to pay your buyer's agent, and the listing, and the sellers really only, quote unquote, has to pay the listing agent. However, again, 90 some percent of the time, the seller is still passing on a certain percentage over to me. So in essence, you're not going to end up paying me anything. However, there could be some exceptions. And if there are exceptions where a certain property is not passing on that 2.5%, then I'm going to let you know ahead of time. So we're going to do a property search, or if you send me a property, if we don't find any ones that you want to go out and look at today, then whenever you send me a property, I'm going to look that up and I'm going to share that with you if it's not 2.5%. And so I just have a form that I send them before I show the house that just outlines, here's the address, the MLS number, it's offering this percent. You agreed to this percent. The gap is this percent. It's just an acknowledgement form. Here, sign and date.
And I know that they've talked before about, or I've attended one where what do you do if the amount that the seller is offering exceeds the
Exceeds the
agreement?
2.5%.
Yeah, like they offer 2.75.
Right. Well, you just say that I work for at least 2.5%. I mean, you can do what you want. I don't know that I haven't met a buyer yet who's been picky about me making extra money. I suppose if it was a family member or you wanted to be generous, you could allow them to have that 1/4% or 0.5% towards their closing costs. But I'm taking that I'm taking that extra money because there's too many other times where I do have to fudge on my commissions to help put a deal together. And to me, it helps make up for the other times where I end up taking less than 2.5%. So I just tell them I work for at least 2.5%. So if it's 2.5% or more, we're good to go. If it's less than that, I'm going to let you know. And then you have a choice to make. Do you still want to go look at the property? I'm going to do my best to negotiate, a lower sales price, seller contributions to closing costs, or whatever I can help negotiate on your behalf to offset that 0.5% or whatever it is difference. But if for some reason I'm not able to, that's gonna be added on to your closing costs. And then I just make sure I get that sheet filled out before I show them the home that's only passing on 2% or whatever it is. And then if that's the house that you end up getting under contract, then you're turning that piece of paper into the title company to show that the buyer's going to bring, 0.5% to closing.
So I have a question, another
Sure.
question. What if we have the agreement that I get 2.5%, but the listing agreement says 2%? Who's going to pay the difference?
Good. Right. So that's what I was just talking about. So the way you go about that is you have to, as far as you're concerned, so what the law says is that negotiating commission cannot be a part of the real estate transaction. So it has to be, as far as you're concerned, it has to be ahead of time. That's why it's important to get your buyer broker agreement signed of what they're agreeing to pay you. Two, then you're just explaining ahead of time in the consultation, hey, if there's a difference, I'm going to try and negotiate a price drop. I'll try and negotiate seller contributions towards closing costs that are equal to or greater than the 0.5% that you would have to bring to the table.
Hmm.
In the worst case scenario, if I'm not able to do that, then Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, you would be responsible for that 0.5%.
But in that case, they would object.
I haven't found one that objected yet.
Hmm.
Yeah. So see, part of it is our mindset. We're afraid that they're going to object and go somewhere else. So then we act out of desperation and we settle for less. So you've got to decide in your own mind what you're worth and stick to it, just like any other contractor would.
Exactly.
A plumber, electrician, whatever mechanic. We don't go in and try and negotiate with the mechanic. So, they just say, this is how much it costs.
Mhm.
You know?
Exactly.
So
And
I
just like
try and be sympathetic and say, hey, I'm going to try and work in your behalf and negotiate as best a deal as I can, and try and offset that. But if there's this one property that's, and again, I'm showing them that this is the exception, not the rule. This is probably not going to even happen. 99 out of 100 homes are going to be offering that 2.5%. Now, the other thing you would have to say, well, you have to look at your buyer and go, okay, if they're $1 million buyer, then most of those commissions are 2%. So I would just write that in. I would just adjust it for myself going, okay, this is a higher end property. We're shopping in this price range. Most of these homes are offering 2%. And I'm totally fine with that. You're not going to go to $1 million buyer and go, oh, you're going to owe me 0.5%, which is going to be, $10,000 or something, right? So sometimes we have to adjust the percentage based on what the property is. Maybe on manufactured homes that are, 100 grand, maybe I work for 3%. And I'm not willing to do it for less than 3%. Otherwise, it's a waste of my time. So, I mean, you just have to decide for yourself as a business person what your time's worth, what you need to be able to get out of it for it to make sense for you. And maybe in the beginning, you do want all the deals, and so you're willing to take less. But at some point, you'll find that you get busier and you're doing enough deals that you go, oh man, I love these people. I really want to help them, but this is almost a waste of time. And so for this to make sense to me, I'm going to charge a little bit more. And you don't make any excuses for it and any apologies for it. You just tell people like it is. And when you come across just with a calm confidence and you still are empathetic and you show that you care and they know that you're going to do a good job, then they'll pay it because you're worth it. So I really haven't had hardly any pushback on this whatsoever in the 6 years that I've been doing it. I learned it from one of the best in the industry, and I just kind of adapt it for myself. But again, that's all you have to do is you say what you work for up front. You explain that there's a small percentage of properties that might not be offering that. You explain how that percentage works. That'll just show up in their closing costs. I'm going to work really hard on your behalf to try and negate that by getting some seller concessions for you. But worst case scenario, you might be responsible for that if you go with a property that's offering less than 2.5%. But be reminded, I'm always going to share that with you up front, and you have the decision whether you want to go see that property or not. So nobody's forcing them to pay anything. They could turn, if they don't have the money or want to pay that 0.5%, don't go see the home. Go see a different home, right? So again, you're just laying out the information, laying out their options, and then they obviously get to choose what they want to do. And I haven't had any problems with that whatsoever. I close like 95%. If somebody sits down with me at the consultation table, I close like 95% of my buyers sign with me. So it's not hard. It's a lot of it's just our own mindset, and then just practicing it and getting comfortable with it, getting smoother with it.
Yeah, nobody begrudges the title, the escrow officer or the title company of their portion, it's
Their
just
fees,
part of.
right? Or the lender's fees, right? Yeah, exactly. But us realtors, we care too much, and we're up close and personal with the people walking through the process, and so then we feel sorry for them, and then we end up being kind of self-sacrificial, which is not, I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm not trying to say be cold and hard. I'm just saying you got to have boundaries and stick up for yourself. I mean, who are you really working for? Are you working for your family? Or, are you working for your clients? You're really working for your family. You're trying to, you've got financial goals that you're trying to meet. So don't shoot yourself in the foot by being so anxious to take less money because you're afraid. Okay, so so let's talk about showing homes. We've got them to sign. We're ready to go show homes. So I want to give you my showing method and my closing method that will really help you close buyers at a much higher rate in a lot less time. Okay, so I'll just start with what I would tell a buyer in my buyer's consultation. So Michelle, since you're there on the screen, so Michelle, would it surprise you if I told you that over 70% of my clients put an offer in on a house on the first time out?
It depends on if the market is a super hot market, and I've already prepared them to be ready for that.
Yeah, right. Very good. So, but I'm saying that as if you're my client. So I tell my clients that I say, so to the client, would it surprise you, Mr. and Mrs. Client, that over 70% of my clients put in an offer on the first time out? Most of them,
Really?
really,
Really?
they're surprised. And then, I just follow that up with, it's not because I'm a great salesman. I'm not twisting anybody's arms. I just make the process really simple and easy for you to make a decision about the best house for you in the price range that you can afford. So let me show you how I do it, and then I walk up to the steps. So basically here it is. I call it the ophthalmologist method. All right. So most of us have been to the eye doctor at some point, and they put the lenses in front of you, lens 1 or 2, 3 or 4. Okay. So in the consultation, we get to the end, we get to the fun part. We start looking at homes, depending on what's out there. Maybe we look at 5 homes, maybe we look at 10 homes, maybe we look at 20 homes. But when we're first looking at homes on the big screen, again, your number one job in real estate is to set expectations or manage expectations, if you will. So notice I'm giving them permission to buy on the first time out because they probably wouldn't give themselves permission. Not saying they have to. I'm just throwing it out there that a lot of people do. Right? So that starts to work in their mind. Oh, that's okay. A lot of other people do it too. I'm not a bad buyer if a lot of people think, well, I haven't done my due diligence. I haven't seen everything that there is to see. And I certainly don't want to, people want to look good and be right.
Mhm.
And so sometimes they think if I buy on the first time out, then I must not be really doing my due diligence. So what I show them is that I am showing you everything. I am going to show you everything in your price point and in the locations where you want to buy. There aren't any hidden houses that some other broker has, there's nothing hidden in the bushes. Okay. All the houses are out there. All the agents can see all the same homes. And so here's what we're looking for. Now, I'll try and keep the parameters as wide as possible. I mean, I don't want them so wide that we're looking at stuff they're not interested in, but you want to be careful not to narrow it too much, because if you narrow it too much, they're looking at too few homes and then they feel like that they're missing, that they haven't seen enough. All right. So you want to keep them just broad enough, just outside of what they're actually looking for, that they get the feeling that we've seen everything, even any remote possibility of a house that might fit our description. Does that make sense? So just keep the parameters a little wider than what they actually tell you. Okay. So you tell them, hey, we're going to see everything. And what I want you to do is we're going to go through these homes. If when we look at the outside of the house, you're on, and you don't like it, just tell me no. We don't have to click through all the pictures and show you every single room. If it's in a town, neighborhood, whatever that you're not interested in, just let me know. We'll move on to the next home. So we do the search, we put in the parameters, all the homes come up, and I start clicking through them. And I just tell them, either tell me maybe or no, maybe or no. So they say, oh, that one's a maybe. Okay, I click that one to put it in my list. We go through all the homes and we've narrowed it down now to say 5 homes. So we'll take a quick look at the 5 again, because as we put these 5 together, what I found is that a lot of times we'll go back through and they'll go, oh yeah, no, that one, I don't really want to go see that one either. So now we've just got 4 homes. Okay. So Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, do you have time tomorrow to go look at these homes? So part of it is when you set up your appointment, be mindful of when in the week that you set up the appointment. So like maybe you want to make sure that your appointments on, you find out these people's schedule, and you go, okay, I'm going to have the appointment on Thursday. That way we can go out Friday afternoon or late, early evening or whatever, and go look at homes. Or I'm going to set the appointment on Friday so we can go out Saturday morning and look at homes. So you want to be mindful when you set up an appointment so that you can turn right around either the next day, not any more than 2 days out. Hopefully the next day you're going out to look at homes. You've got them, they're in their car. We're going to go look at these 4 that you said were strong possibilities. And they already know we looked at 20 homes. We narrowed it down to 4. These are the 4 we're going to go look at. Now, in the consultation, I'll share with them, I'll say, I make this process really, really simple. What I find is that when people are confused, they can't make a decision. And so what I do is, so you don't have to try and remember all the features of the 4 homes as we start going through them, and then have to remember, now wait a second, that one house had this feature or that feature, this color, that color. So what we do is just make it really simple. We're going to go through the first house. We get done with the first house. I'm going to ask you, we're going to get back there in the living room or by the front door, and I'm going to say, hey, what did you like about this house? And you're going, oh, I love the kitchen. I loved the backyard. I love this. I love that. Okay, great. We go to house number 2. We're going to do the same thing. And then when we get done with house number 2, and I ask you what you liked about it, then I'm going to say, which one is better? If these were the only 2 houses that you could choose from. We're just pretending these are the only 2 homes that you can choose from. Which one would you choose? Well, I think I'd choose house number 1. Okay, great. So now we can forget about house number 2. We don't have to remember house number 2 at all because we know that house number 1 is preferable. So we're going to go on to house number 3. And you're going to do the same thing. House 1 or 3? Still house 1. Okay, house 1 or 4? Oh, wow, 4 is even better. 4 is the best one out of all of them. Then, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, when we get to that point, you're going to hear me say, we've seen all of the homes in the locations and price point that are available. Is there any reason why we can't do some paperwork on this house? So I just tell them up front. So that way they expect it. All I have to do is follow through. I don't have to try and sell them. I'm just walking alongside them, asking them questions. Takes the pressure off of them, takes the pressure off of me. It's just like coaching. It's just like self-discovery. We're just going through the process. Now, the next thing I'll say, because some of them will go, well, we're not in a hurry and we just, want to take our time and we don't want to be rushed. there's no rush. There's no rush. You don't have to make a decision on the first time out. That's totally fine. I just find that most people do. And here's, if we don't find what we're looking for on the first time out, then I'll ask you one of these questions, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer. So in real estate, there's only 3 things that we can change: location, price point, or the conditions of the home. Those are the only 3 things we can change. So if we're not finding the home that we're looking for in that initial search, then it would kind of be the definition of insanity to go back and keep looking for the same home with the same parameters if we didn't find it the first time. We're not going to find it the second time or the third time or the fourth time. So what we're going to need to do, just like a hunter would do, is we're going to have to change something about our strategy so that we find what we're looking for. So you'll hear me say, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, do you want to change the location where we're looking? Do you want to change the price point? Do you want to change the conditions of the home? 9 times out of 10, it's the condition of the home because they have champagne tastes on a beer budget. But you let them say that. You just, so all the way through, I'm giving them my process. We get to the end, they don't want to be pushed. Okay, fine. I'm not pushy, but I'm also going to hold you accountable, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer. I'm not just going to keep opening doors, pretending that we're going to find a house that doesn't exist. So we're going to change the parameters. We're going to change something about our search so that we can actually find what you're looking for. And then you just smile and say, because there is no perfect home, right? And they smile and they go, yeah, there's no perfect home. Right? So do you see what I'm doing? I'm setting expectations. I'm laying out the playing field. I'm showing that I'm the expert. I have a process. All they have to do is follow the process. I'll make it very easy. Not going to coerce anybody, but I'm also not going to play games, and I'm not going to chase a mirage that doesn't exist. So again, 99 times out of 100, people find that very refreshing. Every once in a while, you find somebody that does want to play games and they don't want to buy into my process. And then fine, then I'm probably not the right realtor for you. But most people are going to be just fine with that process and are actually going to find it very relieving that they've got a realtor who's an actual expert who will lead them through the process instead of just being a door opener. So you lead them through all that. You actually get out there and you actually do what you said you were going to do in the consultation. You get to the end, and like I said, over 7 out of 10 people are going to go, yeah, let's write an offer. So then boom, you're writing an offer on whatever house it is, and you're negotiating the contract and getting it under contract and taking it from there. Questions about the showing process and closing process? Everybody is so quiet today.
Well,
It was thorough.
it was very beneficial session actually, and
Okay, good.
thank you so much for these informations.
You are welcome. Yeah, it makes it so much easier when you have a game plan and you're not nervous going, what should I say?
Yeah.
What should I do? How do I close them? Because this really seems like it'd be the perfect house for them, right? And then they're throwing objections your way and whatever. So what I found is that the better job I do in the consultation, the more questions I ask, the better job I do explaining the home buying process
Mhm.
and setting expectations, the less objections I get in the field. And the less explaining I have to do in the field, and the quicker I get them through whatever homes they want to see, and we write an offer. If I take any shortcuts for whatever reason and don't do a great explaining, I'm usually paying for it in the field by having to explain, and answer objections, or possibly have to go out for a second or a third home tour because I didn't do my job in the consultation. But if you'll really hone in on the consultation and do a great job on that, you'll save a lot of time in the field, and it will go a lot better and a lot smoother for you. So yeah. So then negotiations have what questions would you have around that?
Well, I have a question on when you're negotiating, let's say seller concessions, and it's that thing of we put our clients, our ethics, we put our clients, our fiduciary duty first above our
Right.
own.
Yeah.
And yet, what if it comes down to a little bit of money, and it could either go to the buyer's closing costs or to help, which my commission is part of,
Sure.
or being, if let's say it's a multiple, we may be, if the rates drop again, we might be in a multiple bidding kind of thing. And then
Yeah,
do
right.
we just, if drop that extra 0.5% that they were offering and tell the
Uh-huh.
tell them, and then conversely, if you do need to negotiate your commission with the agent outside of the transaction, where do you do that? Is it in a separate addendum?
Right. Yeah. So for instance, I'm currently in a deal. It's a really kind of a special deal. So I don't want you guys to get the impression that I go around cutting my fees all the time, because I don't. Um, it's very, very rare. However, this particular family, they kind of got my heartstrings. They've got 5 adopted kids, and some of them are high needs, and they ended up having to borrow against their house. So they didn't have a whole lot of equity. So they're trying to get a bigger house on a bigger acreage, and we had to make sure the numbers made sense, right? So I ended up taking a cut on the listing side. I sold their house. I ended up taking a cut on the buyer side as well. But if I didn't, the deal wouldn't happen, right? So like making however much I'm going to make as a percentage of what I would have made is more than zero, right? So that was just a business decision that I made. But to getting to your question, Michelle, so we were negotiating their purchase, and I knew their financial situation fairly well between talking with them and talking with the lender. And so then we were going back and forth on the price. They really couldn't quite offer what the seller was wanting. They were offering both a price and asking for like 15,000 in seller concessions. And I believe we ended up being something like, I don't know, $15,000-$20,000 apart. And so I'm just trying to be a creative problem solver, right? And I I know how much cash they have. I know what they're going to get from their sale approximately, and what they're going to need for this. And it's like, man, how do I make this work? Um, and so I just decided, I didn't talk to them. I didn't tell anybody. I just talked to the listing agent. I said, if I can get you, 10,000 more dollars on this deal, um, would the seller meet us halfway, and can we put this deal together? Um, So she asks, comes back, yes. So then I basically just cut my commission in half. You know, because it was a big deal. I mean, it was a lot of money. So, you know, I'm cutting it from 20 grand to 10 grand. I'm still making 10 grand, which is an average commission, right? So it's not like I was making peanuts. So I just made that decision. It put the deal together. And so I just signed an agreement that this was my commission was going to be $10,000. Sent that to the listing agent so she could, show it to the sellers that they were going to be paying less. And so therefore they could accept less. They could come down 10,000 instead of 20,000, and I was going to come up. And so that was going to net them more. And boom, we put the deal together. So, yeah, sometimes you can do that. Most of the time it's something smaller than that. It's usually it comes down to like a home warranty or, a few $100s in repairs, like, hey, we need to get this fixed. And so between the other co-op agent and yourself to go, hey, can we split the cost of this repair? And both of us pay $250 and get this deal done. Most of the time it's something like that where you could just creatively problem solve to take care of a situation that has gotten sticky between the two parties. So that's kind of how how I would go about that. But in the bigger picture, just there's a lot of other ways to solve the problem other than going to your paycheck, I guess is what I'd like to say. So don't go there first, go there last. You'd be surprised. Just kind of stand your ground and not make it your problem. A lot of times we start thinking it's our problem because we're a little bit desperate to make the deal come together. So just hang tight and see what other solutions might be possible, and you'd be surprised. The other agent, your clients, the other clients, somebody's going to come up with a solution that works for the parties and that doesn't involve you cutting your commission. So, and then knowing how to negotiate on behalf of your client, I would say the first step is knowing the market, knowing the current market conditions. And then secondly, knowing how your client fits into those conditions. Are they a weak buyer who doesn't have very much buying power? If so, without being negative, without making them feel bad, you've got to help them understand what's possible and what's not possible, and how you're going to put them in the best position possible to get a house. So it's knowing how to play the game and then assessing your client's position in the game and saying, here's how we could get across the finish line. I've had one of these where this particular buyer just has a mindset and eyes for hot properties, yet he is not a strong buyer. So he keeps getting beat out by competing deals. And so I have to have a conversation with him and say, hey, you've got really great eyes for these hot deals, and here's the situation. Probably not going to beat out. We're down in this investor range, and I know you want to try and save money. However, they've got more money. So what are we going to do? What if we looked at different properties that weren't so hot, or in another location or something, so to where you could actually get your foot in the market and buy something? So you just have to know the market, know your client, know their position in the, do they have the power to really prevail over the other party or not? Can you really stand your ground, or do you need to advise them to adjust? And get more realistic. Usually you're having to try to bring buyers up, right? And you're having to try and bring sellers down to meet somewhere in the middle. But, you know, with your buyers, part of your job in that consultation in the market data is to share with them how much properties are going for. So I would take them to at our market center, we get something called a TMO, total market overview. And so I'll take them to the zip code or zip codes and the price point in which they're wanting to buy and show them what's going on in the market. Oh, there were this many that went under contract, you know, this many that went on the market, this many that went under contract. They're sitting on there this many days. They're going for 99% of purchase price. So, you know, again, you're setting expectations so that when you get out into the field, you don't have a buyer who all of a sudden says, well, I want to offer 30,000. I think this property is massively overpriced and I want to offer 30 grand under asking. Well, we could do that, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer. So you never get into a position where you tell them what they can or can't do or what they should or shouldn't do. Because part of them will, you know, oh, you're not going to do what I'm asking you to do. Oh, absolutely. I'm, you know, I'm not that agent who's going to arm twist you and offer more than what you want to offer. However, it is my duty to tell you about the market. And if you really want this property, my professional opinion is that's probably not going to get the job done. So we could do that if you want. I just want to prepare you ahead of time that their answer is probably going to be no. And wouldn't it be better if we offered a different offer that doesn't run the chance of offending them, still is less money, and if we go back and if we do this back and forth thing, if you're expecting them, you know that they're not going to say yes to your 30,000 under, if you know they're going to come back at like 10 or 15 under, why don't you just offer that now? Because we're just going to go back and forth, back and forth, and back and forth. And while we're doing that, somebody else could come in and make an offer on this property. And then now we're competing and it's going to drive the price up and you won't have any savings. You know, so you just have to be prepared with those kind of conversations and objection handlers that help them see what's really in their best interest, and what's going to work and not going to work, without telling them what to do. So we get in those negotiations, we get something under contract, and now we're moving to the inspection period. They're turning in their earnest money deposit, usually within 3 business days. How are you guys going to handle your paperwork? Are any of you joining teams? Are most of you going to handle your paperwork yourself? Are you going to use a TC? Anybody?
I'm just me, so I'm interested in any ideas.
Gotcha. Okay. So you just have to have a method of making sure that you stay on track. So depending on what your personality is, I don't know what would be good for you. For me, I am not a details person. I am a big picture person. I'm a people person. Don't bore me with the details. And so that would really bog me down. And so I put up a smaller size whiteboard, and I'd have the address of my deal, and I'd have little columns across the top of EM for earnest money, then IP for an inspection period, R for repairs, A for appraisal, C for closing, and then K for keys, or you could use P for possession in case your possession and keys they don't always line up with your closing date, right? So I just had little columns for all of the different stages throughout the process. And then obviously, you you get the paperwork filled out, and then you're just putting it into command in the where it's supposed to go, which that was really helpful when we got command and started using that. So just put it into command and move your opportunity card along the columns as you progress through the deal. The biggest thing is to make sure that you're communicating with your client so that they don't feel like they're in the dark or forgotten about. So kind of the rule of thumb is communicating with them twice a week as you're going through the process. Even if you don't have anything to talk to them about, call them up anyways. Hey, how you doing? Just want to let you know this is where we're at in the process, and this is what's coming up next. So maybe that's a Monday and a Thursday, or a Tuesday and a Friday, but talk to your clients twice a week when you're going through the process. Make sure you're getting your paperwork done and turned in within 3 business days, and, you know, logged into command and all that good stuff. Then this, you know, obviously the second round of negotiation is repairs. So making sure that you're, you know, depending on your background with housing materials and home ownership, and what you know about housing structures, you know, all that kind of stuff, could be more challenging or less challenging. So just make sure that you, I don't know, watch videos, read up a lot on those different things to know what potentially is an issue, or whether or not something's a big issue or not a big issue. In advising your clients as you go through the inspection report with them. Talk to other agents and see what home inspectors they use. Some home inspectors are a little bit of alarmists. It kind of makes them feel good to find all the things that are wrong. And so they're pointing out all the wrong things to your client, and your client's going, holy mackerel, this house is going to fall apart. Right? And they're freaking out over all these things that are in the inspection report. So make sure you find a home inspector that has a more balanced approach and helps the potential homeowner know whether or not these different issues are big issues, small issues, need to be addressed now, could be addressed later, all that kind of stuff. Because your clients, you know, you'll get some clients that are seasoned and know houses and go, oh yeah, I can take care of that, no big deal. You get other people that don't know anything, and so anything in that inspection report, they have no idea whether it's a big deal or not. And something that's really little could be a big deal to them and could blow up the deal. So that's a whole education in and of itself. So make sure you take classes and study and figure out about all the home repair stuff. And because you're going to have to, like, part of what I do then with my clients is come back and go, it is a seller's market, and it's becoming a little bit more of a balanced market where we're going to probably get to ask for some repairs, but not for everything. So we need to kind of make a wish list of the things that are the most important. So I just kind of start it like that, and then just go, okay, let's go through these. Which ones rise to the level of like safety, structural, you know, electricity and plumbing, things like that. We're going to ask for those things. And usually those are the things that the other side will agree to fix. So you're just trying to keep that list to the absolute essentials. Sometimes that is a big list, but other times it's not. And so you just want to be careful. So you negotiate through that, you get through repairs, and then it's time to wait on the appraisal. Appraisal comes in 9 times out of 10 or more, it will come in at value. Generally speaking, appraisers don't want to be the ones blowing up the deal. If for some reason it comes in low, well, then you just got to go back to the seller and say, here's what the appraisal came in at. Came in at 10,000 less than purchase price. My folks don't have the money. That here's what they're, we can't offer 420, we can only offer 410. Again, 9 times out of 10, a seller doesn't want to blow up the deal. They've already been through all of this and it's been off the market for 30 days. So again, 9 times out of 10, they're going to be willing to that price adjustment of $10,000 to just go ahead and close and be done with it, because they know that it just got appraised for that. And so that's likely what it's going to get appraised for again. And so why go through it all over again and with a different buyer and get the same amount of money? Why not just accept this buyer? So most of the time, if it's not a big discrepancy, don't freak out when that happens. You generally can just make a price adjustment and continue on. If it is a bigger gap, then yeah, that's a big problem. And seller has to decide whether they want to continue on or if they want to pull the plug on the deal and do something different. So that does happen. It's pretty rare. I had a deal where we got an inexperienced appraiser and he just gave us a really bad number and it blew up the deal. But we were able to I was on the listing side and we were able to put the house back on the market and we got another buyer under contract, got a better appraiser this time, and the deal went through and my seller didn't have to lose a bunch of money. But that doesn't happen very often. We're about out of time. So appreciate you guys today. Thank you for being a part of the class. I hope you learned a lot. And if you have any other questions for me or interested in any of the resources that I talked about today, I'd be glad to send you guys stuff. My email is timothy.english@kw.com. timothy.english@kw.com. Thank you, everybody, and have a great day.
Thank you so much for your time.
You bet. Take care.